order for you to survive in their world, in a world where they see you as a threat just because you're a black man, then you have to adjust yourself to be less than them so they feel less threatened in order to have access to this. I try not to go to DI too much, but his model is very good for understanding difference between Africans and Europeans. We don't understand the depth of the spiritual difference. Mama Rumba Jurugu is very instrumental in understanding that this isn't just some surface, superficial cultural thing that distinguishes us from them. When you look historically at them, you see patterns. Those patterns don't change. They understand who they are. They understand what they're about, even if it's at a subconscious level, and they act accordingly. The same thing with us. The problem is we've been in their company, if you will, under their oppression for so long that we have lost that. They are who they are, and that's not gonna change, and that's where the confusion kicks in. We think that they have become something different because they smile at us now, because they'll give us larger crumbs now. We don't get that they are always gonna be who they are. If somebody hates you, you can tell. You know, it's pretty obvious. I might not be able to prove that on paper. I might not be able to do an experiment to prove that. There are things that you can feel. I might not be able to scientifically prove it, but I know it because I can feel it. So we look back over time, we see that same consistent pattern with them. Everywhere they've gone, they have murdered. Everywhere they've gone, they've created this buffer class between them and the quote unquote natives. When you look at them, watch them, first thing they're going to do, they're going to assess when they see somebody new is whether you're friend or foe. That's the first question in their mind, whether you're friend or foe. And that isn't something that they have a conversation about. So the guy in Sacramento is not on the phone with the guy in Boston saying, you know, we need to do this. They're having a conversation. They're having a conversation online. They're having a conversation in the movies. They're having a conversation in the shows. We're there for entertainment. They're communicating with each other. They're telling each other what they need to do, what they need to prepare for, how they need to prepare for it. We're just being entertained. You know, so it's like because what is working against us is that I can't sit down and scientifically show you how they are racist in this particular way, or that this is their way. It's just a matter of ability, it's a matter of opportunity. So when I'm looking at them, I see a pattern that's in a people. When I see or hear of one who is doing things that don't fit into that pattern, they just either don't know it or they're still using that to manipulate us. We just don't realize it, because when you have people in such desperate, dire straits that they'll take assistance from anyone, and we, being who we are, we connect what's done to or for us to that person. We've had a lot of great minds who had perverted ways, who were mental to the core, and they said some phenomenal, incredible stuff, and they taught us things that maybe we didn't know before. The problem isn't that, and I'll listen, but the problem isn't that. The problem is that we connect the quality of that person's character with what they said. And in the West, the tradition of lying is so strong, and we bought into it, we become them to the point where we can disconnect that. That's not our tradition. You want to become, you were in the position to become the leader in the community, well, then the first thing that was assessed was your relationship with your wife, with your children. Okay, you can have all the abilities in the world, but for us, character is most important. And you see that pattern too. You see it in Ma'at, you see it in all of the writings, all the behaviors, what was valued. You see that in the person in the community who was the most valued person in the community was the one who gave the most selflessly, without expectation of return. That was our measurement of the good person. the righteous person. You see it through all of the Kemetic writings with that value. So we don't do that, but now we do. And we do that because we have become them. In their children, I'm seeing lying and cheating and plagiarizing first, second, third graders. You're seeing it. So it's going down. And when it moves like that, then it reaches a point where this is us because we don't know anything else. So if you come to the children with something that's African, character is supposed to be this and good, they're looking at you like you're crazy because they're not us anymore. That doesn't mean they can't be reversed, but when you're in this reality, a reality which glorifies being able to trick people, being able to steal from people, being able to use people, I say get you a copy of The Teachings of Ptahhotep and Machiavelli's The Prince. I say read The Teachings of Ptahhotep first though, then read, because you don't want to read Machiavelli and then read Ptahhotep through European eyes. When you look at those two books, even though they're small examples, they're profound in terms of their ability to show you the difference between the values of Europeans and the values of Africa, and that hasn't changed. This is what we don't get. They're in charge. So if I'm in charge and what I have used to get in charge is effective in keeping the people I need to keep under my foot, why would I change? It wouldn't make any sense to change. So they haven't changed because there's no need for them to change. They understand that they're outnumbered in a major way. So they can't just go and wipe out the entire African population like they wiped out other populations, but they can't wipe out the entire population. So you go through a process of attrition where you kill some, you incarcerate some, you make all of them intercidal, of course, but you go through a process where gradually the ones who are left are most like you. The ones who are left defend you to the death. What we don't know is that we're only about like maybe the 4th, 5th grade, if we're talking about going on through a grad degree, in terms of what they do and how they think about what they do. But they're moving us through the grades rapidly. Pornography and what's encased in their pornography, this is their sanity, but most of what they're doing we don't see. We don't have the slightest idea. And they introduce it to us when we get to the point where we are enough like them at that level where we can, where it becomes us. So if we just look at this sexually, there are things that we were being introduced to in the 60s and 70s that were really alien to us. Now those things are gone and they've introduced us to the next level, to the next level, to the next level. If we had known what they were about when they came to the continent, that they were after our children's behinds, they would have never gotten in. Regardless of the resources, all the rest, they'd have never gotten in because of how we value children, how we value family. But now that they have beat us out of ourselves, they have ripped us into unconsciousness. Now that has occurred, we're running to defend them. Genetics encoded culturally over time, a certain behavior, a certain trait that starts at the beginning of a people and it goes from generation, generation. Pretty soon it's going to become normal. I'm of the opinion that over time, these things get incorporated into your genetic structure. Just like we're talking about that post-traumatic slavery syndrome. We're talking about that has become genetically encoded. If these things can become genetically encoded, then who you are, how you look at the Creator, how you see other people, that xenophobia, fear, hatred of others, that becomes part of you. That's how you look at the world. It wasn't just that we were oppressed, that in our community, even to this day, in particularly small black towns, small southern towns, or small black towns, or parts of towns in the South, you don't speak to me, it's like you're saying, let's fight, you're an enemy. You better speak to everybody on the street, whether you like them or not. That, of course, has declined. That rhetorical ethic, remember, he talks about where the first thing they do is they come in and they assess your idea of character. They assess your idea of spirituality. They assess your idea of how, and they pretend to be that. This is how systematic it is. They pretend to be whatever you are so that you become disarmed. And once you're disarmed, then they do what they were going to do to you in the first place. They still do that. That hasn't changed. We live in a house that's in the center of one of the major areas of gentrification in Atlanta. First thing they do is they come in and they smile and they wave and they drive by and they walk by and they'll be like super nice and all the rest is trying to see who's friend and foe. They learned real quick that I was foe and they communicate. So after, I guess about a month of that, none of them, and I hadn't seen all of them, none of them would speak. The next stage is when they begin to buy houses in the area. You might see them at the grocery store, you might see them driving by, but they're not out in the open. After that, when they reach a critical mass, then they turn on you. Then you get to see what they're really about because then they're in charge. It's their space now. So that pattern is all over. If this wasn't the case, what did they say, 5 to 7%? When black folks reach 5 to 7% in a predominantly white neighborhood, then there's white flight. They discovered this in the 60s and 70s. It still applies. It still applies. So the image control for these folks is super critical. And if you were being you, then you don't have to put on the front. You don't have to study other people to see what they're about, what they're like. And again, I firmly believe that is something that gets passed on. It becomes part of your genetic structure. And if I'm correct, then this is what has occurred in ours as well. You look at the generation now, they have, through that school, they have become more like that. They have become an imitation of that in order to become successful, to survive, to succeed, to live in this world. When we were at the University of Chicago, every year they had a colloquium, which, food, wine, people get together, but it was for the black students at the University of Chicago, black graduate students there. And we, I guess we'd been there maybe 7, 8 years and didn't attend that stuff. So we decided to go to that year's. And we walked in, and the first thing I noticed, the guys were over here and the girls, the women were over here. And it was, like a first grade kindergarten dance. Everybody's afraid to talk to each other. So she went to talk to some of the fellas. I went to talk to some of the women. And I asked them, I said, why are you all doing this? Why is the women over here and the men over there? And one of the sisters looked at me and she said, what men? She said, what men? I said, okay, well, let me take my leave and go over and see what's going on over there. And I went over to talk to the guys. I said, hey, how you doing? Hi, how you doing? And I got upset. They're not homosexuals. They've been effeminized. And then it began to register. In order for you to survive in their world, in a world where they see you, Chris Welsing, a whole bunch of other folks, they see you as a threat just because you're a black man. Then you have to adjust yourself to be less than them so they feel less threatened in order to have access to this. And every single one of them. So it's like they haven't changed. We've changed to adjust to them. It's like you look at a child looks at mom or dad's face to read their expression to see if they should or should not be doing this. This is what we've been doing to them all of these generations. And now it's reached a point where you almost can't tell the difference between us and them. When I was a child, you could clearly tell the difference. If I saw a man of half a block away, I could tell you that's a black man from his walk. If I saw a black woman half a block away, I could tell you that was a black woman from her walk. Now it's like you can't. Conversation, what's talked about, how it's spoken, the words, the language, the accent. We have, at least those of us who have become quote unquote successful, you see that major change. They haven't changed. We have. They haven't changed one iota. They've changed tactics, they've changed strategies, they have all that, but they haven't changed. They're still exactly who they are. We're the ones who have changed.